It's the 2022 World Cup. It's Brazil's players. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor, and today we will be looking at Brazil's squad for the 2022 World Cup.
Yes, and this preamble is going to be the same for every media cast we do in the Players Series. So those familiar with it can comfortably jump ahead to around 3.5 or 4 minutes to when we begin talking about the team. And the times for each section are near the bottom, or actually at the top of the show notes now. And for YouTube watchers, those include a timestamp, as well as little bars on the bottom of the video that you can click on to go directly to that point.
For those looking for a quick version of this, you can skip to near the end of the media cast, the last 10 minutes, where we summarize the likely starters. Just prior to that, with about 25 minutes remaining, we'll have some discussion on the squad, the main issues with the squad, their club affiliations, some stats, and an overview of new, injured, and outgoing players. We'll also be editing this media cast into a shorter version for those who are just looking for an overview.
Right, and for those looking for a deeper dive, you've come to the right place. We go through the players and how likely each one is to make it to the final squad, and we explain why we think so and give information on each player's history and standing with the squad. And the way we do this is by first organizing the players into their designated position. And we always note that these are a bit artificial since players don't always play in their coded position. But nevertheless, we find it a good way to organize the discussion.
Then we go through the players and share some of the data we've collected in our files, and using that data, try to predict how likely the player is to make the team, based mostly on their recent participation. We categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seems to be off the squad. We also mention big players who have recently retired and make note of any who are currently injured. We finish by a quick run through of the squad again and try to determine which players will be starters.
Right, and for those following on YouTube, we run a very simple graphic where we list the names so you can actually see the players' names in writing. And this is the same broadcast for the audio podcast, so we're going to try to repeat the names a few times to help listeners familiarize themselves with the players' names, so that when a player steps onto the field, you have a sense of who he is and perhaps can even impress your friends by telling them some details that you learned here.
So that's as much as we can do at this point, but as the rosters are being published, we will do an update episode on teams and players. For the players, that will essentially be going over our predictions, updating them based on the games played to that point, and revealing which players were selected. So keep your eye out for those, probably in mid-November.
All right. Well, on with the podcast or on with the media cast about Brazil. And we're going to start with some takeaways from previous podcasts. For Brazil, we did do a preview for the 2021 Copa America. And also for this World Cup, we've done the group F. Is it Group F or G? Group G. We've done the team podcast for Group G, and there's also a shortened version of that. And here's what we took away from it. Do you want to lead us through the headlines, Connor?
Yeah, so the first is slump.
Okay, well, we're going to take these up at the end, but basically in those podcasts, we suggested that by Brazil standards, they're in a slump right now, and a bit of an arguable point there, but we'll take it up at the end. What's next?
Next, we'll talk about more sober and less antics.
Yeah, we're going to just tantalize you with that headline rather than talk about it here. And we have a third one.
And the third one is a notable lack of issues.
Yeah, perhaps the most notable issue with Brazil is the lack of issues. Again, we'll tease you with that and come back to it after we do the player-by-player section of the podcast. But now let's move on to formations for recent games. So basically, Brazil were involved in the Copa America in 2021, in the summer of 2021. After that, they finished their huge qualifying group for World Cup qualifying with, I think it was 12 games there. And following that, they had a couple of friendlies. So let's take a look at the formations they had in there, starting with the World Cup. Do you want to talk us through that, Connor? Oh, sorry, yeah, the Copa America, I should say, in 2021.
Yeah, so Brazil used a few different formations in the Copa America, all featuring 4 at the back. Sometimes they went 4-3-3 as they did in their opening game. Then they switched to a 4-4-2, and they also used a 4-2-3-1 in the tournament. So a couple different formations in the Copa America.
Yeah, that's right. And then in the final, they returned to the 4-4-2 against Argentina. And let's take a look at the 12 games of World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, and the same 3 formations are used again. So that's 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, and 4-3-3. So all of them were used at least twice over the course of their 12 qualifying games.
Yeah, the 4-3-3 a bit less than the other twos, do you think?
Yeah, the 4-4-2 and 4-2-3-1 were the most common.
That's right. And they had 4 friendly games in June.
Yeah, and each game used a different formation, actually. The one consistency was 4 at the back, as we've seen throughout, but they used a 4-4-2, a 4-2-2-2, a 4-3-3, and a 4-2-3-1. So really varying the numbers of midfielders and strikers.
Yeah, that 4-2-2 is fairly similar to a 4-4-2. So among those, Connor, would you see a favored formation for them?
The 4-4-2 and 4-2-3-1 have actually looks like being used the same amount of times. Difficult to say. It seems like they start out with a 4-4-2 in qualifying in Copa America and even in their friendlies, and then kind of switch after. So maybe the 4-4-2 slightly preferred.
Yeah, and as we said before, the 4-3-3 used a bit less regularly than those others. So when we're going through the team, then keep in mind we'll always be talking about 2 central defenders and 2 wide defenders. The midfield could be anything, and then up top also usually 1 or 2 forwards, but on occasion 3-man forward line there. So let's move on to the squad and talking about the player by player. So we have manager Tite leading them through the tournament, and he has been the manager of Brazil since 2016. So he took them through the 2018 World Cup and the 2019 Copa America and the recent 2021 Copa America. Do you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, so he played professionally in Brazil in the 70s and 80s, but he actually never played for the Brazil national team. And then for his coaching career, he has a long coaching career in Brazil, managing a host of clubs, but most notably Corinthians. That's where he came from to the Brazil national team, and he's managed Corinthians actually a couple different times.
Yeah, just a couple of times outside of Brazil in the UAE, but other than that, he didn't go abroad. Okay, well, let's move on to goalkeepers, and we do this by first of all listing the names of players, the candidates, and then we'll talk about them. And then we'll finish with kind of a review or a summary of the position. So do you want to give us the names, Connor?
Yeah, so in our definite category, we have Allison, or Allison Becker, and Weverton. In our likely category, we have Ederson. In our possible category, we have Everson as well as Santos. And then in possible but unlikely, we have Gabriel Grando.
All right, now let's go back and look at those players. So first of all, we'll just give their recent participation so as to justify why we've categorized them the way we did. So Allison started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he's been on the bench for 3 games and just 2 games that he wasn't selected for.
Yeah, Allison has been with Brazil since 2015 and has 57 caps in that time. He is with Liverpool currently. He's been there since 2018, moving over from Roma, and was with Internacional in Brazil before that.
Right. And in 2018, I saw A. Becker on the back of his shirt, but I think recently with Liverpool, it's been Allison on the back of the shirt. Do you have any insight into that?
I'm not sure. It might actually be A. Becker. He might still be using that.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Allison's first tournament was the 2016 Copa America Centenario, and he was a starter in that, and also a starter in the World Cup 2018. He started and finished all 5 games, as well as in the 2019 Copa America. However, in the 2021 Copa America, it seemed more to be sharing the position along with Ederson, and even third string keeper Weverton played one of the games, and that's what they seem to be doing now, is kind of sharing the position. We'll talk a bit about that at the end of the goalkeeper section, but let's move on to Weverton. So we have him as a definite candidate also. He just started one of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 7 others, just 3 games that he wasn't selected for.
Yeah, he plays domestically in Brazil with Palmeiras. He's moved around. He's been with a couple clubs. He's a little bit older, 35 years old, and only 8 caps for Brazil. So never really been a starting goalkeeper, but has been around the squad recently.
Yeah, and on that note, we should say that our categorization is for them making the squad rather than being a starter on the squad. I do wonder if we've overrated him a bit here, Connor. Maybe if we should move him down to likely with 1 start and 7 appearances. You think we should move him down?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable moving him to likely.
Okay, let's do that, because I think he is the third string keeper, but he wasn't selected 3 times there. Anyway, let's take a look at his tournament history. He was not selected for the World Cup 2018 or the 2019, despite being on the squad since 2017. However, in the 2021 Copa America, he was selected, and as we said, appeared in 1 game. That was in game 3, which he started and finished. By the way, there were 4 group stage games there. I don't think that was a B team game that he started in, rather kind of a rotation of the position. All right, let's move on to Ederson, and fans may be wondering why we have him just as a likely candidate. In fact, since the 2021 Copa America, he started only 2 of their 13 games, and he was on the bench for 5. So 6 games that he wasn't selected for, including the last 4 matches.
Yeah, I guess that does bring his participation into doubt a little bit. He is with Manchester City in England. So Ederson and Allison often facing each other in that race for the title in the Premier League. Prior to that, he was with Benfica in Portugal. He currently has 18 caps, having joined the national team in 2017.
Yeah, he was with Benfica's youth club as well, and moved over from Brazil in around 2009. In terms of tournament participation, he was actually selected for the squad for the 2016 Copa America Centenario, but he was injured and replaced for that squad. So his first tournament was the World Cup in 2018. And for that and for the 2019 Copa America, he was the backup keeper and didn't see any action. But as we said, he kind of rotated in games in the 2021 Copa America, playing 2 of the games there, games 2 and 5, I think it was. All right, well, moving on to the less likely candidates, we have Everson. That's with a V, EV. at the beginning. And Everson got his first appearance on the bench in September 2021, so that was right after the Gold Cup. And he didn't start any of their 13 games, but he was on the bench for four games, but not selected for 9 others, including the last 2 matches.
Yeah, he plays domestically in Brazil with Athletic Mineiro, and he's 32 years old, has yet to have a full cap for Brazil, Everson.
Yeah, that's right, and he hasn't been involved in any tournaments either. So just new on the scene, despite being 32 years old. The second candidate at the possible level is Santos, and he didn't start any of their games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 3 of them.
Yeah, he's also 32 years old and also has 0 caps. Santos currently plays in Brazil as well with Atletico Paranaense, and he's been there since 2010.
Yeah, for his whole career, including his youth career. Well, for the 2021 Copa America, he wasn't on the squad, but instead he was selected for the 2020 Olympic team that was also played in the summer of 2021. So no tournaments for him. And finally, we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Gabriel Grando, and he got his first appearance on the bench in November 2021. Didn't play any games, but was on the bench for 2 games there. Not selected, though, for the last 6 matches, so it looks like he kind of came in and out quickly.
Yeah, and he is young. He's just 22 years old. No caps, but possibly some in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, he plays for Grêmio in Brazil and possibly, as you say, a future candidate. Okay, well, let's summarize the position. And we have Alisson, Ederson, and Weverton, who all shared starting keeper duties in the Copa America there. But it was Alisson for the round of 16, and then Ederson played the last 3 games of the Copa America. So from that perspective, it looked like Ederson was the starting keeper. But actually, Weverton started the first 2 World Cup qualification games, and then it was Alisson for most of the games, Ederson also getting 2. And Alisson also played most of the friendlies. Weverton started the first one there, and Alisson got the next 3. So all in all, it was, I think, Alisson, I would predominantly too strong a word. I'd say about 3/5 of the time, Alisson was the starting keeper.
Yeah, interesting to see such rotation at goalkeepers, especially at the level of Brazil. Usually doesn't happen that much. Teams prefer to have a goalkeeper, get them to know the defense, that sort of thing. But they have 3 good candidates at least. So, but yeah, a bit of an unusual choice. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, I do agree. I mean, it was interesting as we went through previous tournaments because they did seem to have one steady keeper that they selected to start and finish all the games. But having prepared this for Brazil, we're going to see that in all the positions, really, that rather than going with one candidate in each position, they seem to have gone with a philosophy of rotating a couple of players. Maybe that's something worth talking about at the end. Okay, shall we move on to central defenders? And if you want to take us through the candidates there.
Sure. So we actually have only identified one definite candidate in our central defender category, and that's Marquinhos. In likely, we have Eder Militao as well as Thiago Silva. In possible candidates, we have Lucas Verissimo and Gabriel. And then in possible but unlikely, we have 2 more. We have Felipe and Leo Ortiz. And then finally, it seems to be off the squad, we have Joao Miranda.
Yeah, seems to be off the squad. He may be retired, actually. He's 38 years old, so I think I'll put him in the retired category there. And let's go back and go through these players one by one. Some veterans here. Marquinhos Despite, he's not as old as some of the others on the squad. He got started 10 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was on the bench for 2 besides.
Yeah, he's not as old as some others, as you mentioned. He's just 28 years old, but has amassed 71 caps in that time. He currently plays for French giants PSG, where he's been since 2013, having a stint with Roma before that and Corinthians before that as well.
Yeah, I think his name is so familiar to me that I thought he was older than he actually is. His first cap for Brazil was in 2013, and his first tournament was the 2015 Copa America. And he didn't start in that tournament or actually in the World Cup. He did in the 2016 Copa America. But after the 2018 World Cup, he was a starter in the 2019 and 2021 Copa America, actually named to the team of the tournament there in 2021. So he seems to get better with age. Okay, let's move on to Eder Militao. And he started 7 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and on the bench for 3 and not selected for 3 others.
Yeah, he's 24 years old, and he's currently with Real Madrid. His path there began at Sao Paulo and then was through Porto, but he's been with Real Madrid since 2019, and he has 23 caps for the national side, all coming since 2018.
Yeah, 2018, his first cap, and he was around for the 2019 Copa America, but was just a substitute there, subbed into Game 6 with 13 minutes left, so didn't see much action in that tournament. In the 2021 Copa America, he started and finished games 1 and 2, but then lost his starting position and appeared only in Game 4. It was Game 4 that was their B team game, where they tried out some of their lesser used players, and he scored a goal in that tournament too. Okay, let's move on to Thiago Silva. And he really is a veteran in every sense of the word. He started 7 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2. However, he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches.
Yeah, the 38-year-old currently plays with Chelsea, having spent 8 years prior to that at PSG. 109 caps for Thiago Silva, which is staggering, certainly in a team like Brazil, and 7 goals, which isn't that bad for a central defender either.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's currently the captain. That's been a bit on and off. I know there was a bit of conflict between him and the previous manager over that. He's been around for a long time. He was on the squad for the 2010 World Cup, but he didn't see any action in that tournament, but was basically a starter in every tournament since, including the 2013 Confederations Cup. He was a starter and the captain for the 2014 World Cup, and I won't go into too much detail. Starter and finish in the World Cup. I'll focus on the World Cups and in the 2019 Copa America. Despite being the captain in 2021, he didn't start the first game, but he did from the second game and basically resumed a starting position there. So named to the team of the tournament in the 2018 World Cup and in the 2019 World Cup. I think part of the reason we have him as likely is his age, but it looks like that's not really holding him back for this tournament, Connor.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to the 2014 World Cup, the one played at home. Of course, memorable for Brazil by their 7-1 thrashing at the hands of Germany. But Thiago Silva was not present for that game. He was actually suspended. So not saying he would have stopped all 7 goals, but his absence anchoring central defense was certainly felt by Brazil.
Well, that's an interesting point. Do you think it wouldn't have happened if he was back there?
It's difficult to say, but Brazil looked completely disorganized, and he was captain at the time. He is such a strong organizer, a strong personality. Surely it had to have had some effect. He played all other games in the World Cup except for that one. So I think you can draw some conclusions from that correlation.
Yeah, I'm tempted. Yeah, I'm tempted to think that it wouldn't have happened quite that way if he wasn't there. Meanwhile, I've checked into the captain situation, and it seems like it's a rotating position. So that seems to be a theme here. I know Neymar has had it for a while, but Thiago Silva, for me, is the kind of the captain of the team. We did his bio. Sorry, I was kind of waiting for you to do that. Just one more detail there, in that when he was playing with Dynamo Moscow, he played in Portugal and in Russia. This was in 2005. He was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and that threatened to end his career. But he overcame that, and it's amazing that he's playing at 38 years old.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, we'd better move on with Lucas Verissimo. And so he is a possible candidate, and he got his first appearance on the bench in September 21. So shortly after September 2021, shortly after the Gold Cup, and started 2 of their remaining games and was on the bench for 3 others.
Yeah, just 2 caps to his name. He's 27 years old, and he currently plays his club football in Benfica.
Yeah, so we might see him at this World Cup, but given the age of some of our central defenders, we might more likely see him replacing them after they retire. All right, next we have Gabriel. And we have him as a possible candidate. He got his first appearance on the bench in November 2021 and didn't start any of their 13 games, but was on the bench for 4. However, he wasn't selected for the last 4 matches.
Yeah, Gabriel plays his club football with Arsenal. He moved there in 2020 from Lille in France. 25 years old, and like you said, no cap, but he has had a decent start to the Premier League season so far.
Yeah, I would say so. That doesn't always necessarily, that's not necessarily enough for Brazil, though it is for most teams. We'll talk about that at the end, kind of hot players. Anyway, let's move on to Philippe in the possible but unlikely category. Philippe returned after a 9-month absence in March 2022. To start, didn't start any of the 3 remaining games, but was on the bench for 1 and then disappeared again, was not there for the last 2 matches.
Yeah, he's 33 years old. He currently plays for Atletico Madrid and was with Porto prior to that, moving to Europe from Corinthians in Brazil. He has just 2 caps to his name, both those coming since 2018.
Yeah, that's right. And he didn't participate in any tournament up until the 2021 Copa America. And there he was on the roster, on the bench, but just for game 1, he withdrew injured after game 2, presumably getting injured in training rather than on the pitch. So he does have a tournament under his belt, but barely so. And he actually was replaced in that tournament by our next candidate, Leo Ortiz. So Leo Ortiz didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, but he was on the bench for 2. However, he wasn't selected for 11 of them, so pretty doubtful there.
Yeah, he's 25 years old, and he's played his whole career in Brazil, currently with Red Bull Bragantino.
Right, and I think actually he's 26 now. With Red Bull Bragantino. And he, as I said, was in the 2021 Copa America, not selected initially, but coming in to replace Philippe there, but didn't see any games anyway. And we'll finish with veteran João Miranda. And he returned after more than 2-year absence in September 2021 and appeared twice on the bench, but then disappeared again after that.
Yeah, in Europe, he's played for Sochaux, Atletico Madrid, and Inter Milan. But he's also had spells in China and a couple spells actually with Sao Paulo, where he's been since 2021. He is up there in age, as you mentioned, 38 years old, and has amassed 53 caps since 2009.
Yeah, a lot of players return to their home country and sometimes even their home club after in their retirement years. He's been around for a long time, since 2009. He participated in the Confederations Cup game, but his next tournament after that was the 2015 Copa America. Those are kind of his prime years. He started and finished in that tournament and in the 2018 World Cup. But by the 2019 Copa America, perhaps he was aging out a bit. He just appeared as a substitute there and then wasn't selected for the 2021 Copa America. So a bit of a surprise that he came back briefly after that, but briefly it was. Okay, well, that is central defenders, the candidates, and I'll tell you what's been going on in that position. So we saw in the formations that it's always a four-man back line, so always two central defenders. And really, it's been a rotation of Thiago Silva, Marquinhos, and Eder Militao. It was in the Copa America until Game 4, but it was Thiago Silva and Marquinhos pairing for the last three games of the Cup. But the rotation continued with the three into World Cup qualifying, and newcomer Verissimo joined that rotation for two games. But Silva and Marquinhos it was in the friendlies, with Militao coming in once. So I'm kind of expecting the rotation to continue in the Cup. It seems like Silva and Marquinhos are the main pairing. Militao coming in but playing a little bit less, and Verissimo perhaps joining it, but I would have expected to see him in the friendlies if he was really becoming part of that rotation. Okay, let's move on to left back position, and if you want to take us through the candidates there.
Sure. We don't have any definites, but we do have a likely candidate in Alex Sandro. We have two possible candidates. That's Alex Tellez and Guilherme Arana. And then in possible but unlikely, we have Renan Lodi.
Okay.
And just to clarify on the graphic, Kev, Alex Sandro we have as a likely candidate.
Oh yeah, sorry. Thanks. Good eye there. Yes, and let's talk about Alex Sandro. So he started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was subbed in for 1, out with coronavirus for 1, and not selected for 3 others. So we couldn't quite put him as a definite candidate, but he's pretty close.
Yeah, the 30-year-old currently plays with Juventus in Italy, having moved there from Porto, and he has 37 caps to his name with 2 goals as well.
Okay, and his first cap was in 2011, but it took until 2019 actually to for him to get his first tournament there. So in 2019 Copa America, he was subbed into games 2 and 4, and actually gained a starting position for the last couple of games, and also a sub in the 2021 Copa America, but a similar story where he gained a starting position for games 2 and 3, but then lost that starting position. So has never actually firmly established himself as a starter, a bit more so over the recent period that we've been talking about. Okay, Alex Tellez is a possible candidate. He returned after a 14-month absence in January 2022 to start 2 of their remaining 6 games, and he was on the bench for 4 others.
Yeah, he's a Manchester United player, though currently he's on loan to Sevilla in Spain. He moved to Manchester United from Porto, and prior to that was with Galatasaray in Turkey, and then Grêmio and Juventude in Brazil.
Yeah, so he has 8 caps since 2019, but despite being on the squad since 2019, he wasn't selected for the Copa America either in 2019 or 2021. So if he makes this tournament, it'll be his first. The next candidate is Guillem Arana. And Guillem Arana started 3 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. And he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 5 and not selected for 4. So actually might have put him ahead of Alex Telles here.
Yeah, he currently plays in Brazil with Atletico Mineiro, but he actually had 3 years in Spain with Sevilla from 2018 to 2021. He's 25 years old and has 4 caps to his name so far.
Yeah, I actually think I put him as possible, partly because he's a bit of an injury risk, and we'll talk about that at the end, towards the end of the podcast. Finally, we have Renan Lodi. So he didn't start any of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was on the bench, though, for 2 of them, but not selected for the last 6 matches.
Yeah, he's an Atletico Madrid player, but he's been loaned to Nottingham Forest for the start of the 2022 season. And he moved to Atletico Madrid from Atletico Paranaense in Brazil.
Yeah, that was his youth club too. And he's been with the team since 2019. I wasn't paying attention. Did you mention his caps, Connor?
No, I'll mention it now, though. 16 caps at just 24 years old.
Okay, sorry, I should be more focused. His first tournament was the 2021 Copa America, and he was a starter in that tournament. Started game 1, then missed a couple of games, but did start the last 4 games there. So it's a bit of a surprise to see him off the squad, given that he kind of nailed down a starting spot there. He got 2 yellow cards. I'm just checking to see if he was suspended. No, he avoided suspension, got 2 yellow cards, and was injured for, I think, during the tournament there. So Renan Lodi now looking like he's unlikely to make the squad. Okay, well, let us review the position. So it was Renan Lodi for most of the games in the Copa America, but Alexandro did start games 2 and 3 there. And it was Alexandro for most of the World Cup qualifying games, but Arana came in twice and Alex Telles came in twice. And those times that those players replaced Alexandro were in the last 3 games, or 3 of the times were the last 3 games when they had already secured passage. So perhaps they were willing to experiment with the lineup a little bit more towards the end of World Cup qualifying. And those 3 players, Alexandro, Arana, and Telles, also shared the position in the friendly. Actually, Alex Telles getting the last 2 games there. So the position seems to be a bit up for grabs here. And we'll move on to right backs. And you're going to take us through the candidates?
Yeah, so we have 2 in our likely category. That's Danilo and Dani Alves. And then in possible, we have Emerson Royale.
Right.
And that's it.
Okay, well, we'll start with Danilo. And he started 7 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. And he was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 4, including the last 2 matches.
Yeah, Danilo plays with Juventus in Italy, where he's been since 2019, moving from Manchester City, before that Real Madrid, and then Porto and Santos in Brazil. So just a huge list of clubs. He's 30 years old and has 46 caps for the national team.
Yeah, a pretty good resume. Well, his first cap was in 2011, but the first tournament was the 2015 Copa America. And he was actually selected for the final squad there, but injured before the tournament and replaced by Dani Alves, who we'll be looking at next. He was a starter in the 2018 World Cup too, but then suffered a thigh injury in training there. So, and wasn't part of the 2019 Copa America squad. So really, the first tournament he fully participated in was the 2021 Copa America, 10 years after his first cap. And there he started all 7 games, except for the B team game there. Okay, let's move on to Dani Alves. And he returned after an almost 2-year absence in September 2021 to start 5 of their remaining 13 games, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 2.
Yeah, Dani Alves also has an incredible resume. He was with Barcelona for 8 years, from 2008 to 16, part of that great Barcelona team. Then moved to Juventus, PSG, Sao Paulo, back to Barcelona, and now he plays for UNAM Pumas in Mexico. He's 39 years old and has 123 caps, so he's kind of been there and done it all for Brazil.
Yeah. I was just UNAM Puna seems like a bit of an odd choice for a player with that resume. Anyway, the Copa America 2007 was his first tournament. He was a sub in that tournament, except for Game 3, and basically has participated in every tournament since then, including the 2010 World Cup, where he was a sub but gained a starting position from Game 3 onwards. In the 2013 Confederations Cup, he was named to the team of the tournament. For the 2014 World Cup, he started and finished games 1 to 4, but then lost his position for the final round games. And nevertheless came back in 2015 as a starter in the Copa America, but he did miss the 2018 World Cup due to a knee injury, and that was considered a big loss there to Brazil. For the 2019 Copa America, I have him listed as the captain, and he was the Golden Ball Award winner for Best Player of the Tournament for the 2019 Copa America. However, he wasn't selected for the 2021 Copa America. Instead, he played in the Olympics as an overage player and was the captain of that team. Phew, that's a lot to go through, Connor.
Yeah, wow. Well, real 39, whether he has one more tournament in him or not.
Yeah, well, it looks like he will, but he and a few other players look like they'll probably retire after this World Cup, which may give room for players like Emerson Royal here, who is our possible candidate. He just started one of their 13 games, so couldn't get in ahead of Alves and Danilo there. And he subbed in for 2 and was on the bench for 3. However, he wasn't selected for any of the last 5 matches.
Yeah, the 23-year-old plays with Tottenham in the UK. He's been there since 2021, but moved actually from Barcelona. Though he had a couple loan spells in his time there.
So he's been with the team since 2019 and has 7 caps, and his first tournament was the 2021 Copa America. There he only started the B team game 4, and a bit of trouble actually getting onto the field, but perhaps one for the future. Do you think they'll bring him to the Cup?
I guess it's probably him or Dani Alves in terms of probably that right back cover for Danilo potentially. So tough to say. If they go with a more experienced Alves, then he might just be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I say positions like this, they sometimes bring 3 players, but they can't bring 3 players to cover each position. So I wouldn't be surprised if this position just has 2 of them, but it'll be interesting to see what they do there. As far as the position goes, it was Danilo in the Cup. Danilo played the position in the Cup, and in World Cup qualifying, by the way, Emerson did play 1 game in the Cup, and in World Cup qualifying, Emerson replaced Danilo twice, and Dani Alves came in twice near the end. and continued into friendlies, playing 2 of those. Then it was actually the central defender, Eder Militao, for one of the games, and Danilo came back to play the last game. So Emerson is kind of showing up here and there, but it does seem like Danilo and Alves are the main picks there. Okay, well, we don't have any general defenders to talk about. We saw Militao moves around a lot, but or moves around a little, but other players tend to stick to their positions. So we move on to midfielders, and we begin with defensive midfielders.
Yeah, we have a couple candidates here. In the definite category, we have Casemiro. And then in the possible category, we have Fabinho.
All right. Sorry, in the likely category.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just 2 defensive midfielders to talk about, but we are going to combine this position with central midfielders because there's quite a lot of overlap there. But let's talk about Casemiro, and he started 7 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was on the bench for 2, but he was actually out with an infection for 3 games, so just 1 game that he wasn't selected for, which is why we have him as a definite.
Yeah, Casemiro started with Sao Paulo in Brazil, and then moved to Real Madrid, where he spent 10 productive years. And just this summer moved to Manchester United in England. He's 29 years old and has 65 caps to his name.
Yeah, and I think a couple of points, or maybe just 1 point, he's been the captain. Again, it's a rotating position. But in terms of tournaments, his first one was a 2015 Copa America, where he was on the bench and saw no action. But he started participating in tournaments, and in the 2018 World Cup, he started all 5 games except for 1 game where he was suspended, having picked up 2 yellow cards. Pretty bad tackles, actually. So 2 bad tackles getting him those yellow cards. And for the 2019 and 2021 Copa America, he was a starter there in the central midfield. All right, and actually named to the team of the tournament there in 2021. He scored a late winning goal against Colombia. Let's move on to talk about Fabinho. And he started 6 of their 13 games for the 2021 Copa America. He subbed in for 4 and 3 matches that he was selected for.
Yeah, Fabinho has been a Liverpool player since 2018, moving there from French side Monaco. He's 28 years old and has 28 caps for Brazil, all coming since 2015.
Yeah, I mean, despite that pretty impressive resume, he has had trouble kind of making his way onto the team. So his first cap was in 2015, and he was on the roster for the 2015 Copa America, but didn't see any action in that tournament or in the next one in 2016, the Centenario edition, and wasn't even selected for the 2018 World Cup or the 2019 Copa America, but came back for the 2021 Copa America and again wasn't a starter in that tournament. He did start and finish 2 games, including the B team game there, but a bit tough to break into that position, hey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, before we summarize that position, we'll move on to players coded as central midfielders. And who do we have there?
Yes, we have one definite candidate in Fred. We have none in the likely, but a couple possibles. That's Gerson and Bruno Guimaraes. In the possible but unlikely, we have Arthur Melo and Eda Nielsen. And then in seems to be off the squad, we have Douglas Luiz.
All right. All right, well, let's go back to Fred. And I can't believe he just gets away with that moniker. I got to say, it's really hard to search him on the internet. He started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and he was on the bench for 3 and not selected for 2 matches, but those were the first 2 matches after the Copa America.
Yeah, and Fred has been with Manchester United since 2018, moving from Shakhtar Donetsk, actually in Ukraine, where he spent 5 years, having come over from Internacional in Brazil.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred is 28 years old and has 28 caps, so similar stats to Fabinho.
Okay, and he's been with the team since 2014. He didn't make the 2014 World Cup, but and actually didn't make the 2015 Copa America either. He was on the preliminary squad and didn't make the final cut. However, he was called in to replace an injured player there, but still struggled to make the squad, not selected for the 2016 Copa America. And for the World Cup in 2018, he was just on the bench for that one. Didn't make the 2019 Copa America either. So really, the first tournament he was a full participant in was the 2021 Copa America. There he started and finished all 7 games except for that B team game, game 4 there. Next, we have Gerson. We have him as a possible candidate. He got his first cap in September 2021 and started 2 of their remaining 13 games. And was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 5. However, he was not selected for the last 4 matches.
Yeah, Gerson plays with Marseille in France, where he's been since 2021, moving from Flamengo in Brazil. And yeah, 25 years old and just 4 caps to his name so far.
Yeah, so he was actually with Roma, so kind of jumping back and forth from Europe to Brazil there, but he doesn't have any tournaments under his belt. And next we have Bruno Guimaraes, and he returned after a 10-month absence in September 2021 to start 2 of their remaining 13 games, additionally subbing in for 5 and appearing on the bench for 1, but not selected for 5 of those matches.
Yeah, Bruno Guimaraes is currently making his name with Newcastle in England. He moved there from Lyon. And was with Atletico Paranaense in Brazil prior to that. 25 years old, 8 caps and 1 goal so far.
Yeah, that first cap was in 2020, and he is making a good impression there with Newcastle. But as I said, for a player before that doesn't necessarily help their cause for becoming a starter on the squad, as we'll see later. He doesn't have any tournaments under his belt either. So we can move on to Arthur Melo, a possible but unlikely character. Possible but unlikely candidate. And he returned after a 16-month absence in March 2022 and didn't start any of their remaining 4 games, but was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1. However, he left as quickly as he came and wasn't selected for the last 2 matches.
Yeah, Arthur's 26 years old, and he's played for some big clubs, Grêmio in Brazil, and then Barcelona and Juventus, and actually was loaned to Liverpool for the start of this season.
Right.
Yeah, and 22 caps so far for Arthur Melo.
That's right, and the first one was in 2018. He wasn't selected for the 2018 World Cup, but he was for the 2019 Copa America. And there he was on the bench for game 1, but gained a starting position for the remaining 5 games there and was named to the team of the tournament. So a pretty good impression in his first tournament, but that wasn't good enough to get him selected for the 2021 Copa America. So kind of disappeared after that Copa America and came back recently. Eden Nielsen is the next candidate, and he is also possible but unlikely. And he got his first appearance on the bench in September 2021, so right after the Copa America there, and didn't start any of the 13 games, but was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 4, but not selected for 7 others, including the last 6 matches.
Yeah, you may think this is a young player breaking in, but in fact, Eden Nielsen is 32 years old. And those 2 caps are the only 2 he has, as you mentioned, and he currently plays in Brazil with Internacional.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, and our final name is Douglas Luiz, and we have him as seemingly off the squad. He didn't start any of their games since the 2021 Copa America, which he was involved in, and we'll get to that soon. But he was subbed in for one and on the bench for one. However, he wasn't selected for any of the last 8 matches.
Yeah, not looking like a good sign there for Douglas Luiz. He's 24 years old, has 9 caps. He was with Manchester City for several years, but moved to Aston Villa in 2019.
Yeah, and 2019 was his first cap, and he was selected for the 2021 Copa America. He was a substitute there. The only action he saw was in that B team game, game 4, and he was even subbed out of that after 63 minutes. But yeah, he was subbed in for one other game right at the end. And that's it for Douglas Luiz. So we don't expect to see him at the Cup unless you were really to pick things up for Aston Villa. And now that we've covered defensive and central midfielders, we can talk about the position. So usually in the center of the midfield there, it's usually one player, but sometimes it's a pairing. So in the Cup, it was Casemiro when it was just one player, and Casemiro and Fred when it was 2. Fabinho and Douglas Luiz also made appearances in the Cup. And really, it was a rotation of these 4 players, Casemiro, Fred, Fabinho, and Douglas Luiz in World Cup qualifying. However, Douglas Luiz only started 2 games there. And then Gerson appeared twice near the beginning of World Cup qualifying. And Fred and Casemiro were the pairing in 3 of the 4 friendlies, with Casemiro alone in the other. So it looks like Fred and Casemiro are the main candidates there. Okay, well, let's move on to left midfielders. And actually, we don't have any candidates coded as a left midfielder. So we're going to use this little gap to introduce a player who I've repositioned as a versatile midfielder. In fact, it's Lucas Paqueta. Lucas Paqueta, who is coded as an attacking midfielder, but I've kind of changed him to a versatile midfielder because in the period we're talking about, he's kind of played all over the field. I think he even played as a forward once, and we'll deal with him here. We're going to see him kind of popping up in all of the positions we'll be talking about. Lucas Paqueta, wherever he started 12 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and not selected for one other. That makes him the player who started the most games during this period.
Yeah, very interesting, and especially as a versatile midfielder, it seems like they try and find a spot for him on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas Paqueta moved to West Ham in the summer from Lyon. He also previously had time with AC Milan and Flamengo. He's 25 years old and already 35 caps, 7 goals, so a pretty good return for Lucas Paqueta.
Yeah, 35 caps since 2018, which was his first year. He wasn't part of the World Cup squad, but he was part of the 2019 Copa America. However, he was only a bench player there, and only appeared briefly, coming in at 83 minutes into game 4 there. For the 2021 Copa America, though, he was a starter. Well, he started games 1, 4, 6, and 7, so a starter about half the time. Maybe they were starting to employ their rotation system during that cup. And he scored 2 goals in that tournament, and now seems very firmly established on the squad. So versatile midfielder, Lucas Paqueta. I'll just go back and talk about the left midfielder position in general. So if you imagine the 3 formations that we talked about, The only time there's kind of a left midfielder is in the 4-3-3 formation, which they only used 4 times. And it was central midfielder Fred moving over. And then a few more attacking players stepping into the position. So attacking midfielders Coutinho and Paqueta. And strangely, Neymar actually played as a left midfielder in one of the 4 times. So 4 different players every time they used that formation. Let's move on to right midfielders, and we have a couple of candidates there.
Yeah, we have Everton Ribeiro, that we have him as just possible but unlikely. And then we also have Willian.
Yeah, Willian, and we're putting Willian in the retired category here, even though he's still playing at the club level. And we'll tell you why we put him there. But we'll begin with Everton Ribeiro, not to be confused with Everton, who we'll meet soon. Everton Ribeiro started 2 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 6 matches, including the last 4 matches.
Yeah, the 33-year-old has spent his entire playing career in Brazil, except for 2 seasons with Al Ahly in the United Arab Emirates. Currently with Flamengo. He's 33 years old and has 22 caps coming since 2014.
Yeah, so a bit late in joining the squad. I think he was around 23 when he got his first cap, which for is, well, not too late. But his first tournament was in 2015, and that was the 2015 Copa America, where he subbed into a couple of games and actually missed a penalty, hitting the post in the shootout against Paraguay. He wasn't part of any tournament after that until the 2021 Copa America. He was absent from the team for more than 5 years, but returned in 2020. And for the 2021 Copa America, he subbed into 4 games, but wasn't a starter in that tournament. And as we saw, kind of has drifted off the team since. When he was on the field, he played a bit more of an attacking role, like a right attacking midfielder or a right winger. And we'll get to that when we talk about those positions. But we'll talk about Willian next, who seems to be retired from the team. He played one of their 12 games. No, he hasn't. He played one of their games since the 2019 Copa America, so he's been off the team for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, he's still playing club football and recently moved to Fulham in England at the start of this summer, moving from Corinthians. But he can count Arsenal, Chelsea, Anzi, Makachkala, and Shakhtar Donetsk among his former teams. Mm-hmm. He's 34 years old and has 70 caps with 9 goals.
Yeah, so I usually only have players who have played since 2021 here. So he's been off the team for quite a while. But just quickly, he was a substitute in the 2014 World Cup and a starter in the 2018 World Cup, playing most of the tournaments in between. And 2019 Copa America was a substitute, so seemed to be kind of coming to the end of his career there. But still playing at the club level, still a very good player. And that's Willian. So let's summarize the right midfielder position, and it's pretty much the same there as the left midfielder. So just 4 times the position was used in that 4-3-3 formation. And again, one of the times it was central midfielder Fred playing the position. But the other 3 times it was Paqueta. So again, we'll see Paqueta's name popping up all over the place here. For the next section, we've kind of, we've combined left wingers and left attacking midfielders. So unlike some teams, the wingers on Brazil are not defenders who are moving up. Rather, they tend to be kind of attacking midfielder players. So regardless of the formation, it's often the same player, whether it's a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-2. And we have, well, do you want to take us through the candidates here?
Yeah, we have a few. In our definite category, we have Vinicius Jr. In likely to make the squad, we have Richarlison. In possible, we have Gabriel Martinelli. And then in seems to be off the squad, we have Everton.
Okay, so all of those players coded as left wingers, but they also play kind of a left attacking midfielder or even a left forward, depending on the formation. But let's start with Vinicius Jr., and he started 6 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and additionally was subbed into 3 and on the bench for 2.
Yeah, the 22-year-old plays with Real Madrid. He moved over from Flamengo in 2018, and has had a good impact on Real Madrid since. He has 16 caps and 1 goal for the Brazilian national team so far.
Right, so one of the few kind of young players to really kind of insert themselves in the squad here. Despite earning his first cap in 2019, he wasn't part of the squad, which was a bit of a surprise given his good performances with Real Madrid. And even in 2021, he was only a substitute. So it's amazing with Brazil that, you know, some of the top players in the world with club teams like Real Madrid can barely make it into the national team. So he was a sub in the 2021 Copa America, but that's as far as he's gotten. However, he has been starting games recently, so inserting himself into the squad. Next, we have Richarlison, and he started only 2 of their 13 games since the Copa America in 2021 there, and he was subbed in for 2 and injured for 3 and not selected for 6 matches. And normally that kind of participation would make me put him as a possible candidate, but I think Brazil likes Richarlison, and I personally would be a bit surprised to not see him at the Cup. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. He does well for Brazil. He does play a lot of games for them and has a good goal scoring record. 17 goals and 38 caps is certainly not bad. He got his break in England with Watford, moving over from Fluminense in Brazil, and has since then moved from Everton to now Tottenham Hotspur. He's only 25 years old, so sure to add to both those caps and goals in coming years.
Yeah. So his first cap was in 2018. Perhaps that was after the World Cup because he doesn't seem to have been a consideration for that squad. But very popular in Brazil and was a starter in the 2019 Copa America there. He actually got mumps, which is a worrying disease as an adult. For games 3 and 4, so he was in quarantine for games 3 and 4 of that tournament, and he was also a starter in the Copa America. So, as you can see by the caps, was starting for quite a while during that period. But recently, he was also on the Olympics team, by the way, in the summer of 2021. I think he was the only Brazilian to play both of those tournaments. And he was their top scorer in that gold medal winning performance. But those caps would have probably been with the under-23 team, I think. And a bit surprising that he hasn't been starting much since then. Anyway, we have next as a possible candidate, Gabriel Martinelli. So he's off to a very hot start in the Premier League this year. He got his first cap in March 2022 and didn't start any of their remaining 4 games, but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 1 other.
Yeah, Gabriel Martinelli is 21 years old. He moved to Arsenal in 2019. From Ituano, which I don't think is a big club in Brazil by any stretch. And 3 caps for Brazil, yet to score though. Gabriel Martinelli.
Yeah, that might be something to investigate because, yeah, Ituano is not really a familiar name to me. However, at the beginning of his youth career, he was with Corinthians, so it was recognized early on. I'm not really I'm curious what happened there, moving from a big youth club to a smaller one. Okay, we move on to talk about a player who seems to be off the squad. In fact, he last appeared for the national team in 2021 Copa America, and perhaps I should give his name. It's Everton.
Yeah, Everton. He's actually not that old, 26 years old. And has 24 caps, so certainly not bad. He currently plays for Flamengo in Brazil. He moved back to Brazil from Benfica, where he spent a couple of seasons in Portugal.
Yeah, and he had a fabulous tournament in the 2019 Copa America. He was subbed into games 1 and 2 and then gained a starting position and scored 3 of their goals, 3 of their 13 goals. One of them was a really gorgeous run and shot, and a great tournament, and became a fan favorite there and won the Golden Boot Award for the top scorer of the tournament, and also named to the team of the tournament. So things were looking good, but by the time 2021 came around, he was just a sub in the Copa America 2021, or I generally look at the first game to decide that, but in fact it seems like he was more of a rotating starter, starting half of the games there. But a bit surprised that he hasn't played since that 2021 Copa America. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we sometimes talk about the players doing well for their clubs that can't get into Brazil, but equally, you have some players who do really, really well and then kind of fall off the map. And hopefully for Everton, that's not the case. But to go from top goal scorer 1 Copa America and then kind of spotty participation after that is certainly a bit surprising.
Yeah. I wonder, I think the door is still open for him coming back. As you said, he's not that old and that good performance, but it really does kind of show the level of competitiveness for the Brazil squad. In terms of position, Everton mostly plays on the left, but he does pop up in various other places, having played as a right winger and even a right forward one time. In terms of the position then for left wingers and left attacking midfielders, we have Everton and Richarlison kind of taking turns in the cup, and Neymar playing there once. And in World Cup qualifying and in friendlies, Paqueta and Vinicius Jr. Kind of took over the position. And Coutinho made one appearance there, Philip Coutinho, who we'll meet soon. One appearance there in World Cup qualifying. So a very competitive part of the field. Okay, let's move on to right wingers and right attacking midfielders.
Yeah, so we have 2 in our category of definite to make the squad, and that's Antony and Rafinha. And then in a possible category, we have Rodrigo.
Possible. Yes. Okay. Well, let's begin with Antony. Actually, none of these players have tournament experience. We have Antony got his first cap in October 2021 and started 2 of their remaining 11 games, subbing in for 2. However, he was injured for the last 2 matches, but I'll dispense with that here. He has since recovered from his injury and was playing with his club team in early September.
Yeah, and that club team is Manchester United. He got a big money move from Ajax, linking up with manager Erik ten Hag. And yeah, a youngster, 22 years old, but 11 caps and 2 goals for Brazil. So a pretty good start to his international career already.
Again, one of the few youngsters to really make inroads into the team, and impressive that he's a definite candidate for this cup. Rafinha, though, is also a definite candidate. He got his first cap in October 2021 and started 7 of their remaining 11 games, subbing in for 2. and then just 2 matches he wasn't selected for.
Yeah, he's well-traveled. Started in Brazil, but then moved to Portugal, eventually ending up at Sporting Lisbon, then went to Rennes in France, Leeds in England, and now Barcelona in Spain. He has 11 caps and 5 goals, and is 26 years old.
Yeah, he scored three of their goals in qualifying there. So Rafinha also making good inroads into the squad. Rodrigo, which is actually spelled with a Y in the middle, returned after a more than 2-year absence in February of 2022. Didn't start any of the remaining 5 games, but was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2.
Yeah, he's with Real Madrid, moving from Santos in Brazil. Another young player, 21 years old, 7 caps to his name, all coming since 2019.
Right, and it's always a bit difficult to tell when a player kind of shows up right at the end like that. And so we'll be keeping a close eye on him in the update podcast to see if he looks like he's going to make the squad. In terms of the position, right wingers and right attacking midfielders, that position was played by a wide variety of players in the Cup, twice by forward Gabriel Jesus, and otherwise by Everton Ribeiro and that versatile midfielder Paqueta. And it was the same cast at the beginning of World Cup, a lot of interchanging, but towards the end, Rafinha started to got starts there more consistently, and in the last 2 games, Anthony, and then Rafinha came back and played in the friendlies. So looks like a bit of a competition there between Anthony and Rafinha, both new players to Brazil. Okay, and let's move on to forwards now, and we include attacking midfielders in the forwards, and let's go through the candidates first.
Yeah, and there's just one who we've quoted as an attacking midfielder, and that's Philippe Coutinho. We have in the likely category.
Right. Okay. Well, we do have Paqueta also coded as an attacking midfielder, but we changed that to versatile midfielder. So, Connor, are you surprised to see Philippe Coutinho as a likely candidate?
I mean, yeah, I'll say yeah. I think, you know what? I actually am going to change. I do think he is a likely candidate. I don't think he's definite. You know, with his form in with Aston Villa has been very good at times, but it's gone up and down. And you know, there's just so much competition for places. You know, he's not at kind of the height of his career, so that does potentially leave the door open for someone else.
Yeah, I don't know. My own sense of it is that he's kind of drifted off in form ever since leaving Liverpool, but I don't know if I'm right in that. He was with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. I don't think he did that well with them, but do you know?
Yeah, he didn't reach the heights he did with Liverpool, that's for sure. He did make a huge money move to Barcelona, and perhaps that price tag kind of hung over his head and set perhaps unrealistically high expectations.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about his club career, but first we'll talk about his recent participation. He actually returned after a 13-month absence, but he was injured for most of that time. Returned in November 2021 to start 3 of their remaining 8 games, subbed in for 2, and on the bench for 3. I got to say, I asked that question because I was a bit surprised to see him. We've seen how competitive Brazil is to get on the field. So a player with kind of a decline in form, I'm surprised to see him still starting so much for them.
Yeah, and I guess that's why, you know, I kind of went back and forth because he does play for Brazil quite a bit. He has 68 caps and 20 goals, so a pretty good return for a midfield player. He's 29 years old, and we talked a bit about his club career. He actually moved to he signed for Liverpool from Inter Milan, and then went to Bayern Munich, actually, on loan from Barcelona, where he helped them win a Champions League. but was with Barcelona for 3 seasons and then moved to Aston Villa, initially on loan, but permanently since the summer.
Right. Yeah. And he's been around for a long time, despite being just 29 years old. He's been with the team since 2010. So he joined when he was 18. And but his first tournament was in the 2015 Copa America. So quite a while later, he subbed in to game 2 there and earned a starting position, and was part of the 2016 Copa America Centenario and the 2018 World Cup, where he was a starter. He scored a crucial late winning goal there over Costa Rica in that tournament. And in the 2019 Copa America, he was a starter. However, he wasn't selected for the 2021 Copa America. So, perhaps that was due to his form. But sometimes we do have players who are in better form for their national team than with their club team. Perhaps that's what happened here.
Yeah, definitely curious to see if he'll be on the squad or not. And if he is on the squad, what sort of role he'll have with the team.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, let's look at the position. Coutinho himself is usually used on the left, so as a left midfielder or a left attacking midfielder. For the position of central attacking midfielder, it's only actually used in the 4-2-3-1 formation, although we saw they do use that often enough. So in the Copa America, it was Firmino twice playing in that role, and once again Paqueta popping up. In World Cup qualifying, Neymar played the position twice and Paqueta twice, and it was only used in one friendly where Neymar took up the position. And speaking of Neymar, we're moving on to forwards here. And he is our first candidate, but can you take us through the candidates?
Yeah, so Neymar is in our definite category, unsurprisingly.
Yeah.
We don't have anyone else there, but we have 2 in the likely category. That's Mateus Cunha and Gabriel Jesus. In possible, we have Gabriel Barbosa. And then we have 2 and seems to be off the squad. First is Roberto Firmino, which we'll talk about. And then Hulk is the other one.
Yeah, that's kind of a blast from the past, Hulk, but we'll see why he's on the list when we get to him. But we'll go back to talk about, obviously, their biggest player, Neymar. And in terms of recent participation, he started 8 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. And he was out with 2 separate injuries, actually, for 3 games and suspended for 1 and not selected for 1 other. So not as involved as I would expect there.
Yeah, I agree. But over the course of his career, he has been very involved for Brazil. He debuted at 18 years old in 2010 and has gone on to make 121 appearances, scoring 66 goals. So that's more than a goal every other game. Neymar moved to Barcelona from Santos, and then in 2017 moved from Barcelona to PSG, where he's been since.
Right, and as you said, he started young. 2010 was his first cap. He wasn't selected actually for the for the 2010 World Cup, but there was a petition going around, signed by 14,000 Brazilians, urging the manager Dunga to bring him to the cup, but they weren't successful, and so the 2011 Copa America was his first tournament there, and he was part of the Olympic squad in 2012 and 2013 Confederation Cup. He was pretty impressive, scoring 4 of their goals in that tournament. And 2014 World Cup, he was a starter there. If you remember, he did get injured in Game 5. A Colombian player kind of kneeing him and damaging his back there. He was part of the 2015 Copa America, but not for the 2016 Copa America. Instead, he was used for the Olympics in that tournament. I think he would have been one of their overaged players for that one. Started and finished all games in the World Cup 2018, but I made a note that probably more remembered for his antics during that cup, despite scoring 6 goals. Those 6 goals were in qualifying, actually. He scored 2 of their goals in the cup, actually, and wasn't part of the 2019 Copa America, injured for that one, but part of the 2021 tournament and named to the team of the tournament there. So a huge player for Brazil, of course. He scored 8 of their goals in qualifying for this tournament and was their top scorer there too.
Yeah, extremely prolific for them. He brings attention, good and bad, kind of wherever he goes, but undoubtedly a valuable member of the Brazil squad.
Yeah. Okay, well, a definite candidate, no surprise there. And Mateus Cunha is our next candidate. We consider him likely. He started 3 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America and was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. And the 5 games he missed, he was out with 2 separate injuries. So when healthy, he's been consistently selected.
Yeah, he plays for Atletico Madrid, and a young player, just 23 years old.
Yeah, he's been on the team since 2021, but wasn't selected for that tournament, for that Copa America. Rather, he was selected for the Olympic team there. So, again, one of the few young players. I wouldn't say he's made inroads really into the squad, but maybe a bit more than most of the young players there. But to really make inroads, he'd have to get ahead of our next candidate, which is Gabriel Jesus. And he started 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America, and additionally was subbed in for 5, but not selected for 4. So not playing as much as I would have guessed, Connor.
Yeah, he is getting more game time, though, with Arsenal, who he moved to after 5 very successful years with Manchester City in England. He's one of those players who seems to have been around for quite a while, but he's still just 25 years old. Has 56 caps and 18 goals for Brazil. So pretty impressive numbers.
Yeah. As you say, he seems like he's been around for a long time, but actually the 2018 World Cup was his first tournament. His first cap was in 2016. But actually, he didn't make the Copa America Centenario that year because of visa issues. However, he was a starter in the 2018 World Cup, and he didn't score any of their goals in that tournament, but he had scored 7 goals in qualifying for that tournament. For the 2019 Copa America, he was just a sub for games 1 and 2, but gained a starting position after that. And 2021 Copa America was a starter, but something of a rotating starter in that game. He also got a red card, which limited his participation, and he didn't score any goals in that tournament either. So Gabriel Jesus looks like he's a bit better for his club than he is for his national team, but I'm sure a lot of Brazilians will be angry at the mere suggestion of that. So we'll move on to Gabriel Barbosa, who we consider a possible candidate. He started, like Gabriel Jesus, 4 of their 13 games since the 2021 Copa America. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, but he wasn't selected for any of the last 4 matches.
Yeah, Barbosa is a player who started in Brazil and then has returned. He left Inter Milan in 2020 to join Flamengo. He's 26 years old, 18 caps and 5 goals so far in his career.
Yeah, he had a 5-year absence during his time. That was around the time of the 2018 World Cup. but he got his first cap in 2016 and was part of the Copa America Centenario there. He was a substitute. A bit of a surprise starter for that cup because he hadn't really played for Brazil before that. But then, as I said, a 5-year absence, so missed the World Cup in 2018 and the following Copa America, but was back for the 2021 Copa America as a substitute. But again, a bit of a rotating starter. He started a couple of games there, and it seems to be kind of the same thing in the game since, a bit of a rotating starter. He scored actually 2 of their 40 goals in qualifying, and 18 caps and 5 goals in his 6 years with Brazil. It's not great, is it, Connor?
No, especially in a very competitive position. Probably need to be doing a little bit better.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have Roberto Firmino, and I'm sure some listeners will be surprised that he is seemingly off the squad. But indeed, he hasn't appeared for the team since the 2021 Copa America.
Yeah, interesting. He, of course, a Liverpool player. He's been with Liverpool for quite some time, since 2015, moving over from Hoffenheim in Germany. Has 55 caps and 17 goals, so a decent return. All those come in since 2014, and he's 30 years old, so certainly not aging out by any stretch.
Yeah, would I be wrong in saying that he's probably more famous as an enabler than as a scorer?
Yeah, I think you're right. Liverpool, he's often been overshadowed by Sane and Salah, but his value is certainly, Mane and Salah, but his value is certainly well known and part of that front three. But yeah, he doesn't always get the goals himself, but has kind of, I think, always been seen as a really important forward player.
Yeah, amazingly unselfish for a player at his level. He got his first cap in 2014, wasn't part of the 2014 World Cup, but was for the 2015 Copa America, where he subbed into game one and then gained a starting position after that. And wasn't part of the 2016 Copa America Centenario, was on the preliminary squad there, but didn't make the final cut. So kind of on the outskirts of the team, even for the 2018 World Cup, where he was selected, but just a substitute in that tournament. It was only in the 2019 Copa America that he was fully a starter, starting all 6 games there. But in the recent Copa America, was also just a substitute. But he did start games 4 and 5. However, he was subbed out at halftime in both cases. So obviously seems to be kind of struggling. Almost we could say he always struggled to make the starting lineup for Brazil in the tournaments.
Yeah, maybe they're just looking for a slightly different type of player than what he brings to the table at Liverpool.
Yeah. Finally, we have a throwback to the past almost in Hulk. Are you familiar with him, Connor?
Yeah, kind of a cult figure.
Yeah. Well, the reason we have him on the list is because he returned after a more than 5-year absence in September 2021. And he didn't start any of the 13 games, but he was subbed in for 1. And on the bench for 1, and then he disappeared again, as he kind of has throughout his career, kind of appearing on the squad, sometimes becoming a big player for them and then fading off or disappearing. Quite comical, really, the way he's come in and out.
Yeah, well, he's 36 years old, so it's certainly at the tail end of his career. He is playing with in Brazil with Atlético Mineiro, but he's well traveled. He's played in Japan, in Portugal, really doing well actually for Porto, for Zenit St. Petersburg, and then also spell in China. So he's been around the block.
Yeah, that's for sure. And now back in Brazil. Well, I won't go through his tournament in detail. I'll just say his peak years were the 2013 Confederation Cup and the World Cup in 2014, where he was a starter. But he didn't score any goals in either of those tournaments. and kind of off the team and popped up his head in 2016 Copa America Centenario. That was his only other tournament. But I have, for some reason, fond memories of Hulk. I think cult figure is a fun way to put it. Okay, well, let's finish with the position of forward. So we saw in the lineups that this can be a single centre forward, it can be a pairing, or it can even be a three-man forward line. So we'll deal with the single centre forward position first. And in the Copa America, that was Richarlison twice, Neymar twice, and Barbosa once. All three of those players also appeared in World Cup qualifying. But Jesus and Matthias Cunha were in the role more often. Actually, Cunha coming in for 3 games in a row towards the end of World Cup qualifying, but otherwise not seen. And then in the final friendlies, it tended to be Richarlison when they had the one-man forward. It's basically the same characters when it's a two-man forward line, a rotation of the same players. But we also see Paqueta and Coutinho both making appearances as one of a pair of forwards. And generally, Barbosa tends towards the right in a two-man forward line. And when it's a three-man forward line, it could be forwards or attacking midfielders playing in the role. And when it is forward, it tends to be Neymar on the left and Jesus towards the right. But quite a bit of mixing and matching there, and just tried to simplify it as best I could. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of the player-by-player section of the podcast, and now we move on to a discussion of the squads. But I think it's time to talk about the shirts we're wearing, Connor.
Yeah, well, I don't have anything particularly impressive. In fact, just a gray shirt. But you have a Brazil shirt, I see.
I do. It's one of the few team appropriate shirts I have. Most of the time, I'm kind of faking it just by doing the right color of the team if I can. But I think we should go back and call yours a referee's uniform to show how objective you are.
That's right. Objective and neutral is what I was going for.
Great. Let's take a look at some of the notes, and we'll actually return to some of the things we said at the top of the podcast, which were outtakes from the or takeaways from the previous podcast we did on Brazil. Do you want to talk us through the main titles?
Yeah, so the first topic was the question of whether Brazil is in a slump. What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, by anyone else's standards, we wouldn't call Brazil's record over the recent years a slump. In fact, most national teams would be delighted to have 3 quarterfinal finishes and then a 4th place finish as hosts. But by Brazil's standards, no World Cup title since 2002. And as I said, 3 quarterfinal finishes and 4th place finish as hosts. Would you call that a slump?
For Brazil, yeah, I agree. I mean, they're often ranked, if not first, second or third in the world. So they want to be reaching those, I would say finals in most tournaments they play in. So to not reach that and to get only as far as the quarterfinals, including as hosts, is really, it was 4th place hosts, is really not up to their very high standards.
Yeah. Not so much in the Copa America. I mean, they won the title in 2019, which if there was talk of a slump, that kind of ended that. But yeah, I do think Brazil is very hungry for another World Cup. And they've kind of proven it in their play over the last little while. I'll see if you agree with this, but my sense is a more sober attitude, a more down to business attitude, and a little less antics. There aren't a lot of players, when I say the word antics, who come to mind, but there is one.
Yeah, Neymar, absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know. He's a bit older now. I think we can maybe expect a few antics in the cup, like taking dives and stuff like that. But on the whole, I think Brazil has been really businesslike in this period. I think you noted in in the team podcast that even when they had assured qualification for the World Cup here, that they were still steamrolling everyone as if they wanted to keep going right to the end.
Yeah, their record in qualification was really stunning. It's such a difficult group, like you said. They really overran the competition, and I think they kind of have needed that approach. I mean, historically, playing Brazil, it didn't get much tougher than that. But they've only won, the last World Cup coming in 2002. People haven't viewed Brazil the same way, with quite the same fear, and I think they need to. Just to focus, to work really hard to try and get back to the level, of a team that is the most successful on the world stage.
Yeah, and I would say in recent Copa Americas and in especially this qualifying campaign, we've seen that. So it'll be interesting to see if they are the same way in the cup. But I would say the biggest, the most outstanding issue for Brazil is the notable lack of issues. Not much controversy, not much infighting. They are rotating positions, but I don't hear players kind of whining about how much starting time they have. Do you have a sense of that?
No, I think you're right. The business-like is correct. They lost the final in the 2021 Copa America. That's really kind of the only glitch on their record. They've just been so consistent,
Yeah, it almost justifies the use of the word awesome, Connor. Awesome.
Yeah, often overused, I would say, but they have been awesome.
Well, let me tell you about the word awesome. I mean, like awe-inspiring. Something that we say is awesome should be something that, like, we are seeing God before us, God in action before us. It's a tremendous waterfall thundering down in front of you. It's an amazing starry night sky. It's not getting 86% on a quiz.
I do agree with you.
Okay, sorry, I lost my head a little bit there. One of the other, again, these are not issues but notes, but we've alluded to it in the player-by-player section that we're seeing more of a kind of a rotation of a couple or three players rather than set starters. And we can use goalkeepers as an example. In the 2019 and 2018 World Cup, we saw one player starting all the games. In the 2021 Copa America and in the game since, we see more a position being shared between two players. Did that strike you, Connor?
It does strike me as a bit unusual, but I think in the 2014 or 2018 World Cup, you might be able to correct me, the one where Neymar got injured, it kind of unsettled Brazil, as it did, as we talked about earlier, when Thiago Silva got injured or was suspended for the semifinals in 2014. So I think the fact they're rotating players in should, ideally make them less susceptible if they lose a star or key member of the squad. So I think it's actually a good thing that they are rotating.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. I mean, we saw it actually. We had difficulty kind of putting players as definite candidates because even some of the players who you would kind of intuitively think would be definite only played maybe 7 or 8 of their 13 games. So we have a lot of players at the likely level who are probably definite candidates. It's only, I think, Marquinhos and Paqueta who had more than 10 of the 13 games as a starter. So that was kind of interesting as we went through the players. Okay, we'll just make a note on the formation and consistency, variety. Do you want to talk to that, Connor?
Yeah, so it's always 4 at the back, as we mentioned. Go ahead.
No, you go. I thought I took you by surprise.
Sorry. Yeah, it's always 4 at the back. The midfield and forward lines, though, they alternate between really 3 formations. That's a 4-4-2, a 4-3-3, and a 4-2-3-1. So it's the number of midfielders and forwards varying.
Yeah.
And they kind of, especially the 4-4-2 and 4-2-3-1, they've kind of used basically equal numbers of time since the 2021 Copa America.
Right, and a bit more than the 4-3-3 formation. The next kind of general point is they and maybe this is a bit of a personal observation, but I find that Brazil doesn't have a lot of big egos on the squad. And sometimes I find this kind of undermining European squads a little bit, but with the possible exception of Neymar, most of the players seem fairly subdued and kind of quietly go about their business. And I think this actually allows them to rotate players without the players getting upset about how many starts they're getting or, insisting on being starters. So as we saw, Paqueta and Neymar usually start, and Neymar when he's healthy, because he missed a few games, but it was due to injury, and Marquinhos probably. But all of the other players seem to be satisfied enough with playing half of the games or slightly more than half. What do you think?
I think it shows that they're buying into the system that the manager has set, where you're on a big, a country like Brazil. There's going to be good players around you, and I think people have to accept their role within the team. And yeah, if people can do that and put a team first mentality first, and I think that makes Brazil more dangerous than they are just by the individual star players and star talent that they have.
All right, and then one more point, which I was kind of excited to introduce to you and our listeners to see what you thought of it. Brazil seems to handle newer, younger, hot candidates a bit differently than other teams. Most teams would kind of insert them into the starting lineup right away, not always for the better, by the way. But with Brazil, it's so tough to make it into the squad that some of these new and players who are on fire. I'm thinking right now of Newcastle's Guimarães or Arsenal's Martinelli or Rafinha, who's been playing for Leeds and Barcelona. Some of them last year were very hot. All of them are off to a good start this season. And but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a start ahead of the established veterans. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there are some players, some real veterans on Brazil that have been around for a while and are still playing well. So, in general, I certainly agree with your point that there's a lot of younger players knocking at the door, but I think Brazil has been kind of wise with how they've introduced them. They've gone for a bit more stability, trying to give some players chances, but it's not kind of always being distracted by the newest, shiniest player and trying to find room for them. So I think it's always hard to crack into Brazil's squad. But I think they're kind of trying to fold players in as opposed to rush them in. And I think that's, again, they're probably better for it.
Yeah, nicely put at the end there. Yeah, so I think we'll see these players coming in as substitutes, maybe getting starts because of an injury or getting starts in B team games. But I think perhaps some kind of new soccer fans will be like, well, wow, this guy is tremendous for his club team. Why am I not seeing him starting? It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And they will still rely on players that are based in Brazil, which is important too. It's not only European players who are making the squad.
Right. Well, that's a nice transition into the next section. And do you want to talk about their club affiliations, or shall I do?
Yeah, I'll talk about the club affiliations, and if you have anything to add, certainly go ahead.
You bet.
With Brazil, like some of the top teams, it's really just a who's of big clubs. Brazil has players playing in a lot of different leagues, but all on top clubs. So you have Real Madrid and Barcelona, you have PSG, Juventus. In England, you have, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester United, Man City, Arsenal, Tottenham. So really, kind of in all the big clubs, they Brazilian players are there. But they also have some players from the Brazilian domestic league, which is quite strong, of course. Not always kind of the biggest name players. But I think it's good for Brazil that those players still get a chance and they don't necessarily need to move to Europe to feel that they need an opportunity.
Yeah, I think the Brazilian attitude is not so much that the best teams are in Europe, more that the money is in Europe. So if those players can go and play in Europe during their prime, they'll kind of maximize their potential as money earners. And then we've seen a few of them kind of move back to Brazil in their retiring years. And of course, all of them coming from those teams in the first place, and maybe spending the first couple of years with the Brazilian clubs to develop their reputation. So kind of an interesting model, but a model that most of the players seem to choose. Hey.
Yeah, I agree that starting in Brazil with a youth club, going to Europe and then coming back in Brazil is kind of a well-trodden path for many Brazilian internationals.
Yeah, one player came back to Mexico, which kind of baffled me a little bit, but let's move on to our next section. And this deals with age, experience, and a couple of statistics I've been working on. So one of the things I examine is how many players are kind of on the board for them. And that really is players who have played since 2021. So we see, and the best way to understand these statistics is by comparison with other teams. So we see that there are a few teams, especially the CONCACAF teams, I got to say, USA, Mexico, and Costa Rica, but also Ecuador, that are dealing with a huge number of players, more than 60 players who have played for them over the last couple of years. And it looks like those teams would have a bit of a selection difficulty in having to reduce it to 26. But Brazil is a very reasonable number of players, 46 players, and the average is about 50. So, yeah, it seems like they don't, as you said, shiny new players. They don't kind of bring on every shiny new player for Brazil, which would be hundreds of players, frankly, and kind of try them out in the squad. Rather, they seem to use the club process as a bit of a selection, and they really have to do well for their club to even get a sniff at the Brazilian club. Is that how you would interpret the low number of total candidates?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It's a really high bar to get into the squad, and once you're there and you've proven yourself for the Brazilian team, I mean, then you have a chance of getting more for running the team.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other two statistics, as far as Brazil goes, are not very significant. We have total players under consideration, we say. So we say the definite, likely, and possible candidates. And the average there is 33, and Brazil is at 34. So I don't think there's anything we can really draw out of that, unless you have something to say, Connor.
Nope. Yeah, bang average for Brazil.
Yeah, and the same with the next one. So definite and likely categories, the average is 21. Brazil is a little bit higher at 23. So we can pretty much be sure that most of the definite and likely players are going to make the squad. That would only leave 3 spots for the possible players that we talked about. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there may be a couple surprises, and of course, injuries can and will play a role. But yeah, I think they've haven't experimented too much, which gives a pretty good core of players that we think they'll be selecting from.
Yeah, I think it's a strength in their case that that it's a very solid group of players that's not going to change much in the lead up to the cup. So maybe a couple of players introduced in the late September games, but I don't expect to see more than a couple. You may be interested in the average age, Connor. The average age is 27.6. The average is 25 to 27, but actually in this World Cup it's a bit higher than normal. 26.8 seems to be the average, and Brazil is, I believe, the oldest squad here. No, Iran is 27.7, so Brazil the second oldest squad. Anything to say about that?
Yeah, I guess going through the players, not surprised we're on the older end because we have seen a couple of veterans, you know, that have been around for a while still anchoring the squad, you know, Thiago Silva most notably. So again, in Brazil's case, we know they have young players that they can call on. I think it's an experienced squad, and I don't see the slightly higher average age really working against them at all.
Yeah, actually, I see here that like Dani Alves is 39 and Thiago Silva is 38. So even those two numbers in themselves may raise the average. I think actually in terms of players over 30 years old, there are teams that have quite a few more than them. And the players that Brazil has that are over 30 years old are usually 30, 31, or 32. So certainly not a worry, and Brazil has the talent. You know, a team like Costa Rica is maybe relying on the older players because they can't find other players to replace them. But for Brazil, if you're on the team at 38, it means you're still performing really well at 38. Okay, well, the average number of caps, well, given that they have so many veterans, we would expect this to be on the high level. And it is 31.1 and the average is 29. So actually not as much as I would have thought. But they do have quite a few younger players balancing out that. And again, it's hard to kind of make it onto the squad. I think I'll just jump forward to total goals 186. And I got a new stat here that I've been working on, Connor, and it is goals per cap. Goals per cap. And just to put it in context, the average is 13. Oh, sorry, I'll make this a percent. The average is 13.7%, but Brazil is the highest among all teams at 17.6%. So that's just an incredible scoring ratio. For comparison, we have Germany at about the same level. Germany and Argentina are 17.5%, and the next closest is France at 16.8%. So even 1% makes a big difference. A very high scoring team.
Yeah, and goals from kind of lots of different players as well.
Yeah. We usually kind of look at the percentages of players. We'll take a quick look at that here, but I don't really want to dwell on it too much. But we have, of course, Neymar with that 66 goals in 121. Oh, sorry, 75 goals. 75 goals in 121 games. I have here, but we had 66 in the player by player. So maybe I got to check that out. But yeah, I don't think we need to make much of a case that Brazil has scoring power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move on. And actually, in terms of players and issues to watch, I said above that, you know, one of the most notable things is the lack of notable issues. And you'll see that here. We could say for every position something like this. For goalkeeper, is it going to be Alisson or Ederson? But I'll make short work of that by saying that for almost every position, they've been rotating players. So we might have one player, in this case, Alisson seems slightly more likely than Ederson. But what's really true is that they'll probably rotate in the cup, maybe even the third string keeper getting a game. And rather than going through that choice for all the positions, I think we're going to find that there's a couple of candidates for each position.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the midfield. And we've already talked about this point. This is not necessarily a midfield thing, but since most of the hot new players are midfielders, I'm going to say look for those hot new players not as starters, but as coming in as substitutes. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that's kind of how Brazil gives opportunities to players to crack into the squad. But I think especially for the World Cup, where there's not really about experimentation, you'll kind of see some of the players who got them there, and especially through such an impressive qualification campaign.
Yeah. They may come in for a B team game also, or to replace an injured player, but I wouldn't expect to see the hot names as starters. And finally, on the attack, are we going to see Neymar's antics in this World Cup, Connor?
I hope he's matured a little bit. Certainly he's dominated for some wrong reasons in previous tournaments. I think it's a little bit in his personality. Some of the diving and stirring up trouble. I'm not sure he's fully beyond that. I'm sure he'll have several of his own headlines, as he always seems to.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I have in my notes here, likely to infuriate and amaze in this cup. Okay, let's look at some of the new players. Do you want to introduce the names? And I'll just add a little bit, but we won't go through the whole bio here because we did talk about them in the player by player. But we basically are kind of proving how tough it is to get onto the squad. We just have 2 definite candidates, 1 likely candidate, and then a host of possible candidates. Sorry, I'm saying candidates. I should be saying newcomers.
Yeah. So the 2 definites we have are Anthony with Man United and Rafinha.
Yeah, and as I say, we won't go into detail unless something needs to be said. How about the likely?
Likely we have 1, and that's Matheus Cunha, the Atletico Madrid forward.
Right. And all the rest of them are just at the possible level.
Yeah, so 2 goalkeepers, Everson and Santos.
Right, and we don't really expect these ones to make the squad, especially the goalkeepers.
Yeah, centre backs we have Lucas Verissimo and Gabriel, who plays with Arsenal.
That's right. And as we say, probably just 3 of these possible candidates or so will make the squad. So I would say the odds are kind of against them, although a few of them will.
Yeah. Alex Tellez and Guilherme Arana are both left defensemen.
Yeah, and Alex Tellez is actually 29 years old, but if he makes the squad, this would be his first tournament. That's why we have him here.
Yeah, a couple central midfielders in Gerson and Bruno Guimaraes, the Newcastle player.
Again, well, no, you keep going.
And then 2 young attacking players, both 21, Gabriel Martinelli and Rodrigo, Real Madrid.
Right. Okay, so we probably won't see all of those players and probably will see a couple of them. And let's move on to injuries. Right now, they only have just the 1, and that's to Guilherme Arana, who is just a possible candidate. So Brazil, so far so good as far as injuries go. He was injured in mid-September, and he has an unknown return date on a cruciate ligament injury. I'm no doctor, but I do think that's a bit of, or can be a long-term injury. Do you have any insight?
Yeah, certainly can be. That's one of those injuries that does take a while to come back from.
Yeah, well, as a possible candidate, it wouldn't be a huge loss for Brazil, and they certainly have enough players to cover that. Let's go through the notable absences. And again, we could mention countless Brazilian players who are strong for their club teams, and some of those never even get a sniff at the national team. So the first candidate we have here, Douglas Luiz, is a bit of a representative example. Played a few games for the Cup, and one of the few actually who did get a tryout with the national team, but it was kind of brief. They tried him out and he doesn't seem to have made it. That would be the story of a lot of Brazilian players. So we'll begin with Douglas Luiz, but most of these are basically players retiring. Do you want to take us through them?
Yeah, Willian is certainly in that camp.
Yeah, he was part of the 2019 Copa America, but that was his last tournament, so he's been off the team for a while.
Yeah, 2 attacking players who are not retired. Everton and Roberto Firmino.
Yeah, Everton with a bit of a sudden exit from the team because did really well in the 2019 Copa America and was a kind of a rotating starter in 2021. But is rather suddenly off the team. And Robert Firmino again will be a surprise to some, but that's the quality of player that to leave off the squad. Okay. Yeah, we should probably put him in the same category as Everton and Firmino. So not kind of gone for good, but was a starter in the 2021 Copa America and then kind of suddenly off the squad. So a possibility of coming back, but kind of abruptly off the squad after looking like he was making inroads.
Yeah, Casio Ramos, goalkeeper, is the next name.
Yeah, he was the backup goalkeeper for the 2018, probably the third string keeper for the 2018 World Cup and the 2019 Copa America. But those were his only two tournaments, and now hasn't been heard of since the 2019 Copa America. The rest are actually players. We do have some listeners who kind of follow the team from World Cup to World Cup. So we're going to mention a couple of the bigger names who were on the World Cup squad in 2018, but sometime between then and now have retired or drifted off the squad.
Yeah, that includes Joao Miranda, who we talked about, Marcelo, the former Real Madrid fullback, and Paulinho.
Yeah, so some pretty big names, but again, Brazil has no problem replacing those names. Okay, well, let's finish with a prediction of starters. It might work a bit differently for Brazil since we've been talking about rotating players quite a bit. So I'm going to use yellow for players who we think will start some of the games kind of in a rotating situation. So let's go. Do you think manager Tite is going to be there, Connor?
Well, he's been around for 6 years, so we don't expect a change at this point.
All right. Well, we'll put him as a starter. Do you have an opinion? Okay, I'll maybe mention the definite and likely candidates and let you offer an opinion. So we have Alison Becker as a definite candidate and Weverton and Ederson as the likely candidates. Do you see a starter there?
I mean, I think Alisson, you mentioned, started about 3/5 of the game. So we could see rotation, but I think Alisson is going to be the starter, at least in game one.
Okay, we'll go with that. I think it's going to be a rotation, but as you say, we usually nominate the game one starter as the starter. But really, I think it'll be a rotation with Alisson and Ederson. Okay, let's move on to defenders. Sorry. Shall I name them and then you offer an opinion? We have Marquinhos as a definite and as likely Eder Militao and Thiago Silva.
Yeah, Marquinhos has been kind of as close to ever present as Brazil has had in its squad since 2021. So I think Marquinhos will start. And I do see him partnering Thiago Silva, who's still playing regularly and well for his club team.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. I think, again, it will be a bit of a rotation among the three, but Marquinhos and Thiago Silva do seem to be the two top dogs there. And again, we're talking about two positions here. They'll probably bring, I would say, about 5 players. And so we may see a bit of rotation in that position. For left backs, we have only Alex Sandro as a likely candidate. Which means they'll probably bring Alex Telles as a possible, and Guillem Arana is injured. What do you think will go on there?
Yeah, I think we'll see Telles probably come with the squad, but I think Alex Sandro will be the starter. He seems to be the most likely and kind of the one to have nailed down that position the most.
Yeah, given the candidates that we have here, I'd have to agree. We actually haven't seen any, say, central defenders move over into that position, although um, uh, to me, Alexandro hasn't played enough, quite enough for me to be confident he's a starter, but we'll have to see. For right back, though, we do have more kind of players who have started a bit more. I think Danilo and Danny Alves as likely candidates, Emerson Royal as a possible.
Yeah, good competition here, but I think Danilo is the one I would give the nod to.
Okay. I actually wouldn't be surprised, even though they haven't done it yet, I wouldn't be surprised to see one of these players actually move over to the left. Defensive and central midfielders, for definite, we have Casemiro and Fred. And for likely, we have Fabinho. And they'll probably bring more than three. What do you think?
Yeah, the player I'm most confident for starting is Casemiro.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you consider looking at Fred or Fabinho? Do you consider one of them more likely, or even for Casemiro to have a partner?
Yeah, again, yeah, you just brought up the issue. I was going to say that the formation changes there in the midfield. So sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two. When it's two, it's Fred. But when it's one, it's usually Fred playing as a left midfielder. So I would say Fred ahead of Fabinho.
Okay, I'm satisfied to put Fred as a starter.
All right. Well, we haven't used our yellow yet, but actually, I do think there'll be more rotation than we've made out here. We have Lucas Paqueta. He's a definite candidate here, and we put him as a versatile midfielder, even though he's nominally an attacking midfielder. I'll just say, do you see him as a starter?
I do, and some people may be surprised by that, especially those not, haven't followed his career. But they always seem to find room for him, as you mentioned. He's kind of played extremely consistently, so I think Lucas Paqueta will continue to start for Brazil.
I think so too. Not necessarily sure where he'll start, but he over the past period since the World Cup has started more games than anyone on the squad. So I think we have to put him as a starter. For right midfielders, they don't use the position that much, but they use left wingers and left attacking midfielders more. So we'll kind of look at the attacking end of the squad with the left wingers and the forwards. And we have Vinicius Jr. as a definite candidate, Richarlison as likely, and then the young and kind of hot. I don't mean that in a sexual sense. I mean it as in good form, Gabriel Martinelli, but only as a possible candidate here. Do you see any starters there?
Yeah, not really. I think it will be one of Vinicius Jr. or Richarlison, but I'm not sure who. I'm not sure how often they play together. But yeah, I'm not confident to call a starter there.
Yeah,
What are
me
your
neither.
thoughts?
I think of the two, Vinicius Jr. probably the more likely, but again, I think it'll be a bit of a rotation where both of them get some starts. And I think Gabriel
Yeah,
Martinelli,
I
will
agree.
probably come in as a substitute. Um, okay, for right wingers, we have Anthony and Rafinha as definite candidates and Rodrigo as possible.
Again, I think we'll probably see rotation there as well. It's interesting that position has kind of younger players and players who aren't as well established with the squad. It's the first tournament for all of them. So there's a bit of kind of competition there. So yeah, again, I think probably Anthony and Rafinha the most likely, but not confident.
Yeah, we did see a lot of players rotating into that position in the Gold Cup and the first half of World Cup qualifying. And then these two players kind of seemed to nail it down a little bit more towards the end. But I agree with you. Right now, it looks like it would be one of the two players, but it would be difficult to say which one. And we kind of know that Brazil seems to be going with the rotation system. Okay, we have Philip Coutinho as a likely attacking midfielder, but do you see him as a starter?
I don't. I think that position is more likely to be filled by Paqueta or possibly some of the other attacking players.
Yeah, me too. Among the forwards, we have Neymar as definite, Mateus Cunha and Gabriel Jesus as likely.
I think it's interesting that Gabriel Jesus wasn't taken for the last 4 matches. So that means I don't think he'll be a striker, though if there is 2 up front, then he's a good shout for it. But, Neymar is a definite starter, and I wouldn't be confident enough about anyone else.
Yeah, me too. I'm a bit surprised that Gabriel Jesus has started as little as he has. And as you said, kind of not even called up for the last few games there. I'm sure he will be called up to the Brazil squad, but again, any other team in the world would have him as a starter, but not necessarily Brazil. So again, maybe I'll put him in yellow because I think he'll start a few games. Do you think?
I think it's possible, and I think he is probably one of the more likely candidates if they decide to go with 2 up top. He could be the person who will partner Neymar at the top of the field.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this media cast. So keep in mind, we'll be doing an update as new information comes out, and that will probably be in early to mid-November when the teams have published their final squad lists.
Yeah, and meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And our website, soccerphiles.captivate.fm. And check our show notes for links to our website and previous podcast series.
Okay, and we hope we will see you next time. Bye-bye for now.